Chapter 10. A Programme and the Pelicans. "Now," said Uncle, as they all got up and crossed the lawn, "we've fed ourselves, and we've fed the squirrels. What about getting on with the leopard hunt?" But the children had been whispering amongst themselves. It was really Phil's idea, but he let Wally speak, because it was he who had studied the notice board. "Please," said Wally, straining his eyes to read the clock on the camel house. It had stopped. It frequently has. "The pelicans are fed at 2:30. Ah, then. We may as well watch that interesting event first, as we are so close to their enclosure." "And the otters and the polar bears at 3, said Phil. "The otters are in one place, and the polar bears in another. I don't know how we are to see both. And you are booked to the polars, if I remember rightly. You mustn't disappoint them. So perhaps Kitty and the rest of us will look at the otters while you—" "I want to see Phil feed the polar bears," said Kitty. "Do you? This is getting rather complicated." "Yes," said Alice. "And then there are the eagles at 3:30, except Wednesdays. Why don't they feed them on Wednesdays?" "Ask me another. Perhaps it's a fast day in Eagle Land. But we're getting on. And now may I be permitted to remind you, on my own account, that the lions and tigers are fed at 4, and we simply can't miss that." It was Joan's turn to speak. She had been patiently waiting. "The sea lions are fed at 4:30. Is a sea lion different from a land lion?" "Very different. Quite another sort of creature. But you'll see in due time. It seems to me we shan't have much of the afternoon left." "The diving birds are fed twice," said Wally. He must have learnt every word, figure, comma and full stop on that notice board. "They had one lot at 12, and they get another at 5. "Humph," said Uncle. "Perhaps it's as well it isn't Friday, or we should have the reptiles to fit in too. But everybody's forgotten one time." "What's that?" asked Phil. "Tea time." They hadn't really forgotten, but it was certainly rather bothersome to arrange everything. Alice couldn't help thinking of the fussy little lady who sometimes called on her mother, and was so very particular to have only one cup of tea, and not to stay more than 20 minutes, because she had so many to get round to, you know. "Well, duty before pleasure," said Uncle. "We'll see everything, even if we have to go without our tea." "Perhaps we could hurry up," said practical Alice. "So we could, especially as it is 2:20 already." It was only a few minutes' walk to Pelican Place, but you've no idea how hard it was to get there, for they had to pass the camel house, and the camels were just coming out. Llamas and camels, 2D, riding taking place after 2:30. That was what the notice said, and though Kit couldn't read it, she could see some other children waiting, and she knew what they were going to have. "Please, Uncle," she said shyly, pulling his little finger. She never let go if she could help it. "I should like a." But Phil gave her a sharp dig and whispered, "Not now, you can't. We shall miss the pelicans." Uncle had overheard. "Oh well," he said, "that's another engagement to fit in. Perhaps we shall have time and perhaps we shan't. It seems to me we shall have to come." They had reached the pelicans by now, and no one was quite sure whether they had really caught the last word in the sentence. There was a light in Phil's eyes, however. "Suppose," as Uncle would say. But Uncle was talking. "The pelicans are strange-looking creatures, aren't they? They are found in many parts of the world, but principally in warm countries, where there are wide rivers and marshes. You will notice that they have scarcely any tail, and that they are web-footed like ducks. Only more so, for all their toes are united. Though their wings seem clumsy, they are not so really, for the pelican can soar almost as well as a vulture." "What do they keep flapping their wings for?" asked Joan. "And why don't they stand still?" "Because it is their dinner time, and they know it as well as we do." Indeed, the pelicans were most obviously very hungry. Alice saw with sorrow that there was a notice forbidding visitors to feed them. The birds stood in groups, spread their wings, looked at each other, looked at the people, blinked their eyes, waded to the railings, waded back, pecked at the water in the little stone pool, and generally wore such an air of martyrdom that no one could fail to feel sorry for them. At last the keeper's footsteps sounded, and at once every beak was stretched in his direction. Fish after fish was thrown and gobbled almost in an instant. Joan was understood to say that she would never have believed birds could be so greedy. Oh, they're not really any more greedy than other birds or animals. It's just their way of feeding. Indeed, the big pouches under their beaks show that they are less greedy than many creatures. For the parent birds generally use them to save some fish for their little ones. People used to believe that pelicans fed their young with their own blood, but of course that was rubbish. The mistake probably arose from the red tip on the beak. "Aren't their beaks a funny shape?" asked Joan. "Yes, you can recognise a pelican anywhere as readily as a policeman. The pouch is really a kind of skin bag, capable of stretching to a great size or to shrink till it is quite small. When the pelicans go fishing—" "Go fishing?" said Phil. "Oh yes, the pelicans are great fishers. And what is more, they work in teams. Some of the birds will go into the river and drive the fish into shallow water, so that their friends may catch them, just as beaters drive game in front of the guns. You'd never believe how many fish a pelican's beak will hold." "They've all gone to sleep," said Joan, rather disgusted. "Not really, but having disposed of dinner, they have suddenly remembered that it is a very warm day and that a little rest is due to them." Phil had ceased to be interested and was getting very impatient. "What was the time?" he asked. A gentleman must keep his engagements. "3:15, said Uncle. "Yes, we'd better be going. The Polars are not people to keep waiting." Strange to say, nobody even thought about the otters also being fed at 3. Perhaps, as events turned out, it was just as well. As they neared the Mapin terrace again, and could see the goats on the mountains, Kitty stole from her uncle and shyly took Phil's hand. For once he let her. It was the least he could do. After all, this was her show, though he meant to be the principal actor.